dinosaurs on the earth and had some relationship with them. Now I'll tell you a little bit more about Dana. Dana is a entertainer, now in her early 50s, who has had a very powerful sexual contact with an alien being, or a reptilian being, which was in no way, she was scared at first, but it was an ecstatic experience. It was a powerful connection for her. And it represented for her, she discovered in a sense in this her own warrior energy. She said it was almost as if he were a part of myself who I was meeting in that exchange, that sexual exchange, as if my own energy were incarnated in that fierce warrior and I was really making love with a different reptilian aspect of myself. I feel as if my energy is distinctly reptilian, bold, and warrior-like. Now, she actually has written a manuscript which isn't published, which is one of the reasons I don't want to identify her. Some of you might be able to, but she's talked about a reptilian hierarchy. She's very familiar with this whole area. There's a huge dragon-like figure she calls Draco, which is the Greek word for dragon, that is 15 feet tall, has wings, takes her up, and it's really far out, right? I mean, this is beyond where even I could go, but she's a person of very solid, sound mind. She's also had encounters with other more delicate snake-like beings, and she's played a role as a diplomat, as kind of leader of a sort of snake tribe that makes peace among the reptilians. She described a friend of hers who had a reptilian relationship, a guy she calls Mick, and he apparently confronted one of these alien beings. He said, "Man, you're ugly." And the alien said, "You should see what you look like to us." Now, she has had herself a very powerful connection with an alien race that became extinct. Now, Barbara Lamb, where are you, Barbara? Barbara is here. Barbara has done regression with this person, and I want her to tell you about, because her relationship with this race came out in this regression. So, Barbara, would you come up and join me here?
This was just a few years ago, and I had the great privilege and pleasure and fascination of regressing Dana to this experience. And I had known that she had had experiences with them in this life, including some of the sexual experiences. So we just didn't know what we were going to go into when we did the regression. But basically, the question that we asked, or the issue that we focused on in doing the regression, was what is her connection originally, or that is, what is the source of her connection with these reptilian beings? And in the regression, she went to a whole scene which she sensed was a long, long time ago. She thought it seemed like it might be another planet just because of the coloration of the ground and the sky and so forth. And in this regression, she was a reptilian being. She was a male, and she was strong. As John described it, she was strong and husky and powerful and proud and straight. And she was the leader of a reptilian group of males. And in this particular happening, she was standing on top of a tall bluff with a whole troop of these reptilian beings around her. And they were looking forward in a certain direction, off into the distance. And they could see that there was a huge wave of heat and colored light, red, yellow light coming toward them. They knew it was disaster. She didn't know if it was a nuclear blast or just what it was, but they knew that they were facing the end. And the magnificent thing about this was that instead of their buying into fear, as most of us would do and running around, they stood firm. They linked arms. They linked consciousness with their minds. They had total telepathic communication. And she led them in having agreement that they would stand firm and receive the energy of this terrific wave of destruction that was coming to them, instead of running from it or trying to avoid it. So they were getting ready to just receive it with all the cells in their bodies and their mind and all of their consciousness, knowing that as their physical bodies would be destroyed, that their consciousness, their spirits, yes, reptilians can even have spirits, that their spirits would be surviving and would be transformed into a different dimension. And for her, she was so proud of these beings, proud of herself, with all the strength that they had and the communication they had.
Would you just very briefly, you want to say about your own?
Yeah. Okay. And then there's another thing I'd like to share too, and that is an experience that happened to me personally in this lifetime just a very few years ago. I had already been doing a few years of regression work with experiences of extraterrestrial contact, including experience with some reptilian contacts. And one day, having done some appointments or whatever, I was just walking through the living room in my house, and suddenly, pop, right in front of me, to my enormous surprise, was a reptilian being. He was a little bit taller than I. Now, normally in this life, if I'd seen a reptile of any kind, even a little one, in my living room, I would have been really freaked out. I'm not very comfortable with reptilian beings. But anyway, with this experience, conscious, awake experience, I saw this reptilian being standing in my living room. I went right over to him, extended my hand, held his hand, looked into these beautiful, I thought they were beautiful, golden colored eyes with a little vertical eyeball, little pupil, kind of a lightning strike. And that's all that I remember consciously. But a few weeks later, I had a past life therapy colleague of mine do a regression on me to see if there was anything more to that experience. And to make a long story short, in the few minutes that that reptilian being was there, he said to me telepathically as we continued to hold hands, and I can still remember the feeling, the physical feeling of that hand, thick and strong and not creepy. I was surprised it wasn't creepy. And he reassured me that he is an ambassador from somewhere else, an ambassador representing many, many different extraterrestrial beings who come and interact with human beings. And he was here to tell me, as somebody who regresses people to these experiencers, and sometimes because of my growing up in my conditioned mind, I wonder, could this really, really, really be true? It certainly seems as if it is. But he wanted to reassure me, for the sake of all those different species who come here, that yes, indeed, they do really exist. They do come here. They come here very quickly into our awareness, and they pop out. They disappear from our awareness very quickly, and that it is a very meaningful phenomenon, and that we have no idea how important we are, that's you and me, all of us are to them. So for me, that was a very positive experience. And then just suddenly, he was gone, and I went on with my rest of my day.
Thank you. Thank you. If she ran into an unkind, I don't need this. If she ran into an unkind talk show host, you know what they, okay, yeah. But we're among friends here now. How? Next. Yeah. What are the ways we might think about these encounters? This gets into the example of illustration of what I've been talking about earlier on in the lecture. There's the literal, and I'll take each of these individually, the literal, individual psychological way of looking at it, biology, the phylogeny, that is going back where we came from originally, collective unconscious, the symbolic, metaphysical, myths and religion, or some combination of the above. Now, the literal approach is, they're alien, reptilian beings. They're here. They're coming. They're doing whatever they do with us. They mate with us, or they relate warmly with us or they do cruel things, but they're real, they're here, and the literal approach would have to, and there's a lot of truth there. The literal approach would also include the conspiratorial, paranoid approach to the reptilians, which you've probably heard about, that they're here to they're taking us over, and I don't want to